Every 4th of July, America celebrates its freedom the moment a group of colonies declared themselves a nation of equals, united under liberty. Fireworks explode across the sky, crowds cheer, and flags wave proudly. Yet behind the celebration lies a story rarely told. A story about who was included in that freedom and who was left behind. Freedom, like fire, always leaves ashes behind. In 1776, 56 men signed the Declaration of Independence, proclaiming that all men are created equal. But of those 56, more than 40 were enslaved. The new republic that promised liberty was built on a foundation of inequality. At the time, the population of the 13 colonies was about 2.5 million, half a million of them enslaved Africans. 1 in every 5 people lived in chains. Meanwhile, native nations were already losing millions of acres through war and broken treaties. The rhetoric of freedom rang loud, but the reality was that liberty was reserved for the privileged few. For indigenous peoples, independence brought not freedom, but displacement. Between 1776 and 1887, U.S. policies stripped tribes of over 90 million acres of their land. Entire nations were pushed westward, their cultures targeted for erasure. For enslaved Africans, the revolution carried a cruel paradox. Some joined the British Army, promised freedom for loyalty. Others fought for the Continental Army, believing independence would end their bondage. Yet after the war, slavery expanded from 500,000 enslaved people in 1776 to nearly 4 million by 1860. America's revolution of liberty became an empire of labor and exploitation. Freedom, it seemed, was a privilege traded among the powerful. Women, too, were part of the struggle. Abigail Adams famously wrote to her husband, "Remember the ladies." He did not. While men debated liberty in Congress, women spun thread, nursed soldiers, and managed farms alone. Yet they were denied the right to vote, to own property independently, or to shape the laws that governed their lives. Their revolution would not come until 1920, nearly a century and a half later, when the 19th Amendment finally granted women the right to vote. Even then, women of color remained excluded by Jim Crow laws for decades more. The revolution declared equality, but for women, it was an empty promise, deferred across generations. By the mid-1800s, the wealth gap in the new nation was staggering. The top 10% of white families controlled around 70% of America's wealth. Freed Black Americans, after emancipation, owned less than 1% by 1870. 250 years later, the racial wealth gap remains just as stark. The average white family today holds roughly 6 times the wealth of the average Black family. The Empire of Liberty built its fortune on unpaid labor, stolen land, and exclusion, and the numbers still whisper that truth. In the 1840s, waves of immigrants began arriving. Irish, Chinese, Italians, Eastern Europeans, all chasing the same dream of prosperity. They believed in the American promise, that anyone could rise through hard work. But the nation that declared all men equal greeted them with violence and discrimination. Irish workers were branded as inferior. Chinese immigrants were banned by the Exclusion Act of 18... And during World War II, over 100,000 Japanese Americans, most of them citizens, were sent to internment camps simply because of their ancestry. Freedom, for many, came with conditions. By 1900, the United States had become the richest industrial power on Earth. Its factories, railroads, and cities were built by immigrants, women, and black workers who earned pennies to fuel the dream. America's gross domestic product soared from about $200 million in 1800 to nearly $8 billion by 1900. By 2026, it is projected to surpass $25 trillion. But the story behind those numbers is imbalance, concentrated wealth, uneven opportunity, and the ongoing struggle to define what freedom truly means. 250 years after independence, the fireworks still burst each July 4th. But the echo of that original promise, equality, liberty, justice for all, remains incomplete. In 2026, the U.S. population will near 350 million. Income inequality is at its highest since the 1920s. Native lands are still contested. Voting rights battles have returned. Women still earn only 82 cents for every dollar men make. The revolution's ideals survived, but the revolution itself never ended. Today's youth inherit a paradox. A nation built on freedom but shadowed by inequity. They question the myths, challenge the old narratives, and demand a more honest history. The task of this generation is not to celebrate perfection, but to confront imperfection. Finish what 1776 began, because freedom isn't something declared once, it's something rebuilt again and again. So what does freedom really cost? It costs land, it costs lives, it costs truth. But perhaps the higher cost is forgetting. 1776 was the birth of a promise. 2026 is our chance to keep it.